everyone. This is Toni Vanschoyck, and we have yet another awesome edition of Wealth Rescue. And we tell stories of entrepreneurs, how they're crushing it in their space. We also come to you with awesome tangibles on how you can increase your wealth. But the great thing is I love hearing these amazing stories of people that have gained success. They've done a great job at what they do, but it's always the journey and the story and the bigger things that you want that you're going to have to go through more trials and tribulations to get there. So I say the bigger the goal, the bigger the dream, the more challenges you're going to have. And Megan Jox is a perfect example of, really taking her dream and bringing it to light through her marketing, through her branding, through her business. She wears many hats. She's a woman of faith. She's a mom. She is a successful businesswoman. And Megan, you have been married for how long now?
17 years.
So, you know what? That's a feat in itself. Trust me.
I know. Yes. Oh my gosh. I know.
So, you know what? Let's start out. And I would love for our audience to learn a little bit about who you are and, really, what drives you, what, makes you wake up every morning and crush, even though that as entrepreneurs, we have a multitude more challenges than most people do that have a job. So why don't you give us a little bit of history about who you are and what drives you?
Yeah, sure. So history on me, just keep it to the clip notes, is I grew up in a small town in Kansas. If you've ever seen The Wizard of Oz, I definitely, this is true, spent most of my childhood trying to figure out if Auntie Em was my grandma and if the farm that they filmed on was our farm. So middle of nowhere, Kansas. Once I graduated, I moved to Dallas, Fort Worth, and I went to Dallas Baptist University for a year. And my mom got stage 4 cancer. Then that's kind of where we'll get into my brand a little bit. ConFITence Juice comes into. So that's when I started learning about juice as healing and all of that stuff. Married my husband in 2006. We met down there. We were in a band together. We did music and got married, moved to Ohio, did music. I mean, really, we have done so many things. Then moved back to Kansas to help my mom. She was really struggling with her cancer at that point in time. And we continued to do music and did some tours. And she ended up passing away 3 months after my firstborn was born. And so just, continued to live, moved to Nashville, and started working at a nonprofit residential home for women 13 to 32 with life controlling issues, self-harm, suicide, eating disorders, all of that. And had 2 more kids. And then after the pandemic happened and Antifa, BLM, all those things were kind of, Nashville was a hot spot for, we decided we were going to go ahead and move back home to Kansas. And we've been here for about 2.5, almost 3 years now, building our brand and trying to help people live truly confident lives.
Well,
so what keeps me going?
Yeah.
What gets me going? I think one of the big things that motivates me is, like you were talking about, when you have life kind of hand you your ass and you realize you've been sleeping for so long and you've just kind of been letting life happen to you. You have those wake up moments and you realize you never want to be in that place again as much as you can help it. And so that drives me a lot, living with vision every single day, keeping that in front of me, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then I do have a really big goal of helping prevent child sexual abuse. And so everything that I build, my brands and notoriety of any kind, is to help build awareness around prevention of that. So the little kids keep me motivated a lot too.
Well, children are, our most precious gift, God-given gift.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have to be advocates for me as well. So South Carolina, actually, where I live now, and I'm originally from Michigan, and then, lived big cities all my life, really until we moved down here 7 years ago. It's a little bit more of a slower, quieter life, which I absolutely love. But South Carolina is the #1 domestic violence abuse state. And that, especially, for women, that that's happening to their children if they have the children too.
Yeah.
So, I'm so glad that you're an advocate, because like myself, with my children, I could never imagine. I actually came from an abusive relationship prior to my current husband, and it's ugly. It's so ugly.
Right.
But
Right. So we kind of focus on, there's one helpline in the United States that is set around prevention. So people who struggle with ideas of harming children or have these things, that they can call and get help. And for the United States being one of the top consumers of children, it's pretty crazy that we only have one helpline to try and reason and help people to not actually offend. Other countries do this, Denmark, Germany, all that stuff. They actually have commercials in other countries that say, if you struggle with this, call this number. Tell me the last time you saw one in America that said, if you struggle with this, call this number. So anyway, that is a big, big passion of mine. And it's not necessarily a popular topic because I approach it from a different angle than most want to talk about, as far as going to the person that is in the dark space themselves before they get to the child. So anyway, yeah, it's pretty crazy, but that definitely motivates me every single day. Working in the women's home did that for me. That I just, heart-wrenching stories and knowing them and sitting with them was very hard, and you never want to have another victim after you've been there.
That is, I actually am so glad that you said that, because when you hear these stories from oftentimes grown women that this happened to in their childhood, it's heart-wrenching. And we have to, especially strong women like you and I, we have to be advocates for the change. It's the only way that it's going to change, is that we're out there, talking about it, making it more and more aware, because we have done a really bad job at that. And I think a lot of people have swept it under the carpet. And that's why now that this is a true pandemic.
Well, if you really look at, I think the hard thing is, and I guess what I would say too is, like, when we go back to what motivates me, I had one girl come to me one day. It was on Easter Sunday. I was working in the meds room, and she was in the church service, and she came in there and she was so angry. She was a new resident. She had just come in that day. And I said, what's going on? And she said, I just can't sit in there. I can't listen to what a good God is. And she said, if God's so good, how could my dad sell me to his friends? And that changed my life, because I never want another girl to ask that question. And I never want another dad to go where, maybe if we were willing to have these conversations, if you have somebody that is struggling with these ideas and these thoughts, right now, if somebody were to go to their counselor and say that, they're going to get reported right away. Which of course we want to protect, but also it gives no space for people because we know anything in the dark becomes darker. So you have a lot of people acting on this stuff. And like I said, it's a harder conversation to come at. But if we really want to stop, and we want to make sure nobody has to answer those questions again, we have to look where most people don't want to look. And when that movie came out about trafficking, Sounds of Freedom, did you see that? Yeah, it was so hard, because I want to rescue the kids just as much as everybody, but I want there not to be any to rescue.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. So when she was, that pivotal moment, when this victim said that to you about God, what was your response to her?
I told her if she really got to know the true and living God, she would see, she would find the answer. I wasn't going to insult her with an answer at that point in time. I wasn't going to insult her with a scripture or insult her with, I just said, if you give it time here and you get to know the true God, you will know that answer. But you don't, to me, I'm not going to insult somebody in that moment of we know if you have a relationship with God, he will always come through and he will show himself, and she'll have that answer herself. But it'll mean way more than me interjecting something to her at that point.
But that still was kind of like an answer, right? But you put it, it's almost like, coaching techniques. You put it back in their court and you ask the question with a question, right?
Right.
So I think that that's brilliant. And, good for you that you're doing all of this good work. So I want to go back here just for a second. And I want to talk about, I know that your mom was a huge catalyst in you creating what you've created now, with ConFITence. And well, we didn't even talk about this too, but you also have a background as a personal trainer as well.
Yeah. So I have 2 businesses right now. I actually have been a personal trainer for about 15 years now. It really was my passion to begin with. And I love doing fitness. I love helping women to get strong. Working at the residential home changed my perspective of those things. God taught me a lot about freedom of the body, freedom of the mind, and how you utilize fitness to hear God's voice. That's the whole thing. And then in 2019, went through this big thing in my marriage and just situation to where I didn't know what was going to happen. So I started reconstructing my belief systems and who I was and who I wanted to be and getting clear on what I wanted out of my life. And that led me to a new level of confidence that I had never had before. Understanding how to live with vision and intention and then execute those plans and then stay a friend to yourself in the process, like really understand how to reconcile with yourself. That led me to ConFITence. And so I built my brand Whole Confidence as the personal training side. And then now we have Confident Juice as well. And yes, my mom is a huge catalyst for that. I've been juicing for about longer than that, 19, 20 years. The years keep rolling on. But probably about 19 years when she had stage 4 cancer. And anything we do, ConFITence, whatever tool I've got, I'm going to use to help people heal from the inside out. And whether that is using fitness, whether that is using juice and helping educate people on how food can be medicine, then I use that as well. But we always are going to address the head, the heart, and then let the body follow.
Absolutely. So when that defining catalyst for you to because I think that every entrepreneur knows that very moment and that very thing that happened that said, I have to take this to the next level. What was that for you?
Yeah, well, basically my marriage was falling apart. It kind of overnight, God revealed some things to me. And the next day I woke up and I just didn't know what my life was going to look like. I was a stay-at-home mom. I homeschooled my kids. Most everything I did was at home. I didn't really have a big mean of income. I was a personal trainer, but we had renovated our garage so that I could navigate all the things at home while training. When that happened, I literally didn't know what the day was going to hold, if I would still be married, if I wouldn't be married, what was going to happen to my kids. And I had this really come to Jesus moment where I just broke and I envisioned a world I didn't want to live in. Basically, I envisioned my having to work 4 jobs that I hated, not knowing my kids, them falling into the metro school systems, which are run by gangs. So, and that was a far cry from what we had been building. And I just let myself feel all of that. And then I wiped my tears and I said, absolutely not. I will not let that happen. So I knew very much what I didn't want. So then I started getting a vision for what I did want. And I refused to go back to, I think a lot of young mothers do this, right? We fall into the take care of everybody else, don't take care of yourself. You finally wake up and you realize you're covered in toothpaste and smudged banana, and you have no clue where you went. And for me, that led to a life that instantly I hated. And I was never like that. I've always been an optimist. I've always been excited about life. But that day I hated my life. And that was really the moment for me of realizing that I could only control what I could control. I started asking myself what I wanted out of life. And I realized I had really been a professional half-asser at life. My default was half-ass and average. I didn't want that anymore. I wanted an exceptional life. I wanted the best of the best. And that started, I realized I didn't even know what the best of the best was. So I started every little thing I did, I said, well, if it's going to be the best, I'm going to have to learn what it is. So everything I did, I asked myself, is this my best? So when I brushed my teeth, I said, is this my best? Did I brush my teeth my best? And if I didn't, I rebrushed them. When I would get up in the morning, I used to never make my bed. And I would leave my room and I would look back and I'd go, is this my best? Absolutely not. Make my bed. Is this my best? Remake it if I had to remake it. Every little thing came I really put myself into a flow state of just learning what does it mean to be my best. Every room that I entered, I decided needed to look like a queen lived there, which meant that I had to leave it like a queen lived there. So every time I turned around to every room, is this my best? Is this my best? And at the end of the day, I started realizing I had no regrets because I knew I'd given my best to myself. And then as I got clear on that for myself, I started doing that in my relationship. Like I said, my marriage was a hot loving mess. And as I got clear on what giving myself my best was, I started getting really clear on what I'd been accepting from my spouse. And it was half-ass and average. It's at best. And that's what I was giving too. I mean, to be completely fair about it. And as I went through this journey and I started building that confidence in myself, I started laying new boundaries and communicating differently. What was okay and wasn't okay. I remember this one day we went into Target and I needed to return some stuff. And my husband was like, okay, well, I'm going to go look at this stuff, and basically leaving me with the kids and doing my return. I was like, and in that moment was kind of a moment where I was like, is this my best for myself? Am I giving myself my best? No. So I said, hey, actually, you're going to take the kids, go look at toys, go do whatever. I'm going to go exchange this. Then I'm going to go look at some clothes. And then I'm going to come back and get the kids. And it wasn't a thing of like pride or whatever. It's where I was at and where I needed to go, no, actually, that makes no sense. And I'm not going to actually allow myself to take average anymore. And I communicated with him in the process. I think, for me, if you make a change like that in your life, you need to communicate with the people around you. You need to be able to say, hey, I've realized this is who I've been. I no longer want to be that person. And I'm going to start down the road towards becoming the person I want to become. It's not going to be perfect. I don't need you following me with a ruler. This is a journey I'm going on. I want to welcome you into it. I no longer will take less than. And in my situation, I told my spouse, I said, I'm not going to measure your output either. I don't have time to, come around and micromanage you. So if you can look me in the eye and you can say you've given me your best at the end of the day, cool. That's all I need. So anyway, that's really how Whole Confidence came about, and the Confident brand and the things that we're building underneath the Confident brand.
I want to go back and I want to talk about something though, because you healed a very broken marriage throughout all of this.
Yeah. And still get to every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the one thing, when you drew that line in the sand, was your husband on board?
He had seen at that point me changing. He had seen me really changing. And we were not in a position that I should have been kind to my husband. I feel like it was a very messed up, toxic, whirlwind of things. But I wasn't focused on him and what he was and wasn't doing. And he was seeing me being very driven, very focused on becoming better myself. So when I finally laid that line in the sand, he took me serious. And I gave him the option. I didn't say, you have to do this, you have to do that. I'm going to measure what you're doing. I left it very open to say, hey, here's what I'm doing. You've seen me changing. I'm going to keep doing that because I no longer want what was that. So I'm going to invite you into that. I can't accept less than the best anymore because I'm not even doing that to myself. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be a part of that, then I welcome you into that. If you don't, no pressure. You don't have to be, and I'll have to make different decisions for myself in regards to our relationship. But this is where I'm going. And I said, if you are willing to give me your best, and like I said, I think people get into the issue of, well, they're not doing this and they're not doing that. I refuse to do that. But yeah, so
it's the whole blame game, right? You what you did is you found a solution. And oftentimes people are not focused on the solution, they're focused on the problem.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I think too that was really, really helpful, and I know that God, the Holy Spirit lives in me, and I know that He gave me these thoughts, right? Because they were way above where I was operating. But I remembered not knowing if I would be married the next day. And actually, if you want to get, and you can edit or you could do whatever, here's actually what happened when I woke up that next day, which I didn't really sleep. It was probably 30 minutes of closing my eyes. I rolled over out of my bed alone and so devastated and confused. And I told God, I said, listen, I'm going to open my Bible and it better be where it needs to be. We got to do this like we did in high school, because I've got no energy. I can't worship. I can't anything. And I've been a worship leader. I've been a youth group leader. I've been in it for a long time. And I opened up my Bible and it was in Genesis 14. And it was a story I had never read before that I remember. And it said Abram's brother Lot had been taken captive by the enemies. So Abram took the 300 and some odd men that he had raised in his home, and he went back and got his brother and all the spoils of the land. And it was like that. I knew what happened to Ryan, my husband. I knew this was spiritual, and I knew we were going to come back with the spoils of the land. I didn't know how. I didn't know any of that. My kids were very aware of what was going on. So I sat down with them and I said, all right, guys. And they were kind of scared, they were very young. And I said, all right, let's talk about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. What happened to them? And they said, well, they got thrown in the fire. And I said, right. And I said, was it because they were naughty? Did they do something bad? And they said, well, no, they were worshiping God. Okay. So because they were doing the right thing, they got thrown in the fire, not because they were doing the wrong thing. So our family, we love the Lord and we try to put him first. So we got thrown into the fire. But here's the thing, we're going to go in and we're going to sit as long as it takes. But when we come out, what happened when he came out? And they were like, well, Jesus came with them. Right. So we're going to come out eventually. But for right now, we're going in. And God reminded me too. So I equipped them. They each have gifts of the Spirit. I've raised my kids to hear God's voice themselves. They can hear very clearly. And my daughter, her name's Rhythm. She sings. And I said, that's your weapon. That's all you got to do. When you're scared, when you're not sure what's going on, I just want you to sing. Sing from your heart. No special words, just whatever. Okay. She said, okay. Gabriel, my son, he's got the same giftings as I do. So he hears from God like straight away, knows exactly what God is saying. So I said, Bud, hey, like whenever God says something to you, if you could just let me know. And then, just share whatever he says. If you're scared, just ask him what's going on. He'll tell you, you can hear. And my little ranger, he's just an atmosphere shifter. He truly is a spiritual ranger. So I said, you just keep jumping off the walls, because he was like 1.5 at the time. But it empowered them in the process. And that's exactly what happened. As everything unfolded, and it was such a spiritual battle, God taught me a lot about our power and authority in marriage. I don't know if you know much about the courts of heaven. I knew very little about the courts of heaven. I only knew enough to really make a difference. And when my husband, his dad was dying, and there was a lot of mental struggle for him at that time, and it was crazy. I would talk to him one minute, he would be one person. And then the next minute, I would go before the Lord and I would envision this court of heaven. I had a friend who kind of told me about it. I really didn't chase it down, but I knew enough, and I knew that we were one. So I would envision God as, the judge, and Jesus as my attorney, and then my husband and the enemy on the other side. And the enemy would accuse my husband and say, he agreed to this. He agreed to this. He's mine. He has to pay for it. And I would plead by the blood of Jesus and say, no, I am his speaking authority. We're one. He's not in his right mind. I get to speak for him, and through Jesus, he has to let him go. Toni, I'm not kidding. He would call me right back. He would be himself every time, every single time. The kids and things like that, they would sing, they would do the things to kind of be empowered themselves. And that is what shifted so much of what we were going through. God coaching me through it, because I would have like ducked and run. Like my old self would have just been like, okay, peace, like we're done here. And God taught me kind of through paddleboarding and led me through everything. And I, to be honest, growing up in church, I felt guilty because I was like, I can't worship. I can't anything. I have nothing. And I remember God telling me one day, he said, that's okay, because this is where I'm going to teach you how the word becomes flesh. And he said, you've had years of learning who I am. You've got it in you. If you would look at my Facebook from like 2018, 16, 15, all I do is preach the word on there. I've got purple hair. I look like I belong on TBN. And he said, all these years, we've already been sowing the seed. Now I need you to understand what the word becoming flesh is. And I learned something I never learned in church, which is when the word becomes flesh, you get to go and live your life. And just like Jesus did, he didn't turn around every 5 seconds and go, is this right? Is this right? Am I doing this right? Is this what it was? And there's a season of time where we do that, because that is the growth process. Just like if you watch your kids grow the same way, right? There is a season of time which makes sense for them to ask you everything. But if they did that when they were young 20s, everything, should I drink this? Should I not drink this? Should I go here? Should I go there? We would be immature, which is, I think, what happens a lot in our country is like we keep Christians small. And so anyway, that whole season, God blew my mind, leveled me up all over the place. And it didn't look like anything I'd ever been taught. It didn't look like anything I'd ever been, raised with, really. I started cussing, which, I was really conflicted about that. And he was like, it's okay, girl. It's okay. So that's what started, and what I do now and whatever I do it is with that purpose in mind, to help women to have the tools to navigate a season like that. Let him build it how he wants to build it. Right now, my stuff looks pretty general, very, very general, and on purpose. It's supposed to. But when they get in my way, then we give them what we've got.
Oh, I just love that. But you know what? This whole thing that you've gone through, and with your growth as a person, with your growth in your spirituality, your relationship with God, led you up to, your ConFITence brand. And so why that word?
Yeah. Because it's what I was discovering for myself, and I wanted to give it to other women. It's what I found, right? At the end of all that, through all of that, and that changes everything. Learning how to reconcile with yourself. I have a lot of people that come to me for different things, especially in fitness, want to lose weight, want to do whatever. I can't get you to like yourself if I can't teach you how to reconcile with yourself. So that process led to ConFITence. And I went through Story Brand. I don't know if you've heard of them, but kind of helping you define your brand.
Yeah. Great resources.
Yeah. And that's what helped me to define. They got really clear for me on what do you want to give your client, and ConFITence was what it was. And confidence is kind of a made up word, right? Because we changed the middle of it for fit in the middle. And so I get to define it myself. And I define that for people as a lifestyle of reconciling with yourself, living with vision, intention, and executing on those things.
I love that. So what do you want to do with ConFITence? What's your goal for the future, over the next year, 5 years, 10 years? And then I want to know your bag goal, your big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah. my big goal is to continue to build, or in the next 5 years, launch the podcast, finish my book, all within kind of this year. Hopefully by December, we're at least purchasing the equipment that we need for the podcast. The book should be done in the next couple months, just kind of finishing some editing on that, going back, going, why'd I write that? I need to write this. You probably resonate a little bit with that.
Yeah, well, no, writing a book is not an easy, it's not an easy task. Do you have a title for it yet?
ConFITence. And it's the blueprint for ultimate self-discovery, I think is what it was. So
love it. Love it. And so you've got the book, you've got the podcast, you want to get that done by the end of the year. What does the next, 5 years look like for you?
Yeah, we also have a brick and mortar that we are renovating right now, and that is the Confident Juice. And that I hope to be able to renovate enough so that we have a huge basement. And after we get the upstairs done, which is serving juices, whole foods, very clean foods, we have an infrared sauna, so detoxification, stuff like that. And then I want to put some counselors downstairs if I can get the basement renovated appropriately. So again, we're approaching the whole person, which is the brand in general. And as far as my big goal is to take that and the community that we build from the confidence, right? Like when people are reconciled to themselves and fully living their purpose, they have a different drive in life. And I would like to see that community get involved with continuing to educate people on prevention and help build that. Stop It Now is what it's called. Stop It Now is the helpline to help prevent that. So my bigger overarching goal is anybody that feels led, buying billboards, getting commercials on TV for people to understand that they don't actually have to act on those ideas or thoughts, having bigger conversations with smaller communities because it's everywhere. So that's that. Talking, I'd love to speak, be speaking here in the next 2 or 3 years a little bit more. I used to speak a little bit more, but we've kind of been doing the groundwork for the Confident brand right now.
I love that you're an advocate for that. And I mean, you can use your speaking platform for, not just for confidence, but you can also use it to advocate, to bring in more awareness. What was the name of the
Stop It Now.
Stop It Now. So, you can bring in more awareness for, this particular, the behaviors that people, are thinking about acting on with children. Okay. Stop it before it starts, giving them the platform in order so that they can get the help and, not get reported. There's just so many different things about this and really being an advocate. And you know what, again, it goes back to mental health awareness. This is all part of it. And, that has been more of a buzz, word now in our society. I think what has happened though, is that, again, it's kind of like, all the trafficking and everything like that, is that we have, put a lid on it. We've swept it under the carpet. And the problem has become so prevalent now that we have to advocate for it. We have to make awareness for it. We have to be, those people out there that are advocating to get people the help that they deserve and the help that they need. So, you have an incredible opportunity, to get on stages and speak, because, that's a key thing is for you to be a voice and get out there and share this with people. And to attach it to your brand though well, it's just super cool.
Yeah. I don't know if you know who Danny Johnson is, but I remember, so kind of before the explosion of my marriage and home life, right before that, I remember I was rocking my son one day and I was watching Danny Johnson and I really liked her. My mom was a businesswoman. She was very good at business. And I was sitting there rocking him. I said, I bet I'm really good at business. I think I'm going to start doing something like that. Well, then I got the opportunity to jump into that. But I remember her always saying, like, if you build things, build it with a purpose. And I didn't have one, honestly. I did want to help, like what I was doing at the home. And I did start a small clothing line called Even Better. Our nonprofit is called Even Better. because I knew I didn't have the resources to help people in this situation. But if I could find one, it took me 3 years to find. I talked to prison people that work in the prisons. I talked with people with different ministries. Nobody knew of anything that worked with prevention. So one day we moved here to Kansas, and I was thinking about that clothing line and about what we were going to do. And I was just so frustrated because I'm like, nobody wants to help prevent this stuff. There's nobody doing that. Why? And I was going to help Unlikely Heroes, which they help run sting operations and rescue children out of trafficking. And one day I just had this thought. I was like, your clothing line's only going to be successful if there's more victims. You have to keep having victims to kind of be successful, whatever that means. You know, do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I was like, gross. I don't want that. So that's what guided my eyes in a different direction as far as how do I just make it all stop, you know, and stop it now. You know, it's so interesting. 3 years of Googling and searching and asking questions and nobody knowing of anything. This one night I laid down in bed and I was so frustrated. I just asked my friend who's a counselor, I said, are we just going to have to start this thing ourselves? Are we just going to have to start this ourselves? And I was like, because I don't want to, honestly. I don't know. It is a hard space. And I heard the Lord just say, look one more time. And I kind of wrestled with it. I was like, I've done this like 3 years. I have Googled till I am blue in the face. I cannot find anything. He said, just look one more time. So I Googled, I don't even know what combination of words, and Stop It Now popped up. And I talked to them and anyway. So Danny's kind of encouragement to find something. I had asked the Lord for something because I didn't know. I wasn't on fire for any particular cause. And then over time, that girl asking me that question, then I was like, that's my cause. Like, that is definitely my cause. My family background, they have plenty of this in it. And yeah, so I just realized that this was what I needed to do. And as I build the brand, the confident brand, and women becoming confident and healing from the inside out allows us to have a little bit different conversations that we wouldn't have had before. And so, yeah, everything I do is with that in mind. How do I get to talk about that? I've talked to different people, and I'm on a modeling agency right now, and I talked to the founder of that, and it's just hard for people to hear. Just a hard conversation. I think I got shoved to the bottom of that list real fast because people here, you know, you want to help the offenders, and yeah, you got to look at the bigger picture.
So I have a question before we pivot a little bit on that. You had mentioned that you have family history in this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's not something I think they talk about a lot, but definitely, you know, I think probably at this point, what the statistics are, like 6 in 10 children have been mishandled. And that's been reported. So the statistics are insane. And most certainly that has touched our family background and all of that stuff back before, like my mom's side. And it's a hard conversation for anybody to have. I've seen how it plays out. And I think what's even harder is the shame that people carry because most of the time, like when people saw Sounds of Freedom, and I would have conversations, I felt like Sounds of Freedom was like this big cruise liner coming by and me on this island that I've been waving for a long time and nobody listens. And then cruise liner, Sounds of Freedom, everybody gets in an uproar and I'm trying to shout, and then it just keeps going because then the conversation quickly changed to race and then to Barbie and then to, you know, and it just kept going by. But when I would have conversations with people in the gym, you know, I remember this one girl saying, you know, it just makes me so scared. And like, basically people thinking that trafficking starts with the boogeyman in the alleyway. And it doesn't. It starts with your uncle, your grandpa, your grandma, who knows, really? And I said, those are the conversations we have to have, because we didn't just get here because a bunch of boogeyman got released. We started by not having these conversations a long time ago. And
They were very
and
taboo.
yeah, and they still are,
Oh yeah.
because it's a lot easier to talk about the boogeyman in the alley that, just drives down interstate looking for who he can kidnap, rather than, your good old boy down on the corner.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, you know what is it, you're doing such good work, Megan. Thank you so much for all of that. I do want to pivot the conversation a
Mm-hmm.
little bit because we talked about the mental health. I want to talk about also the physical health and
Mm-hmm.
the reason why you're an advocate for juicing. I've been juicing for years and years and years. But really the true health benefits on how it can truly help people, not just physically,
Mm-hmm.
but emotionally and mentally. So can we talk a little bit about, why you decided to do your own clean juice line?
Yeah, sure. So my mom was diagnosed in 2023 with stage 4 cancer. I was living with her in Dallas, Fort Worth, and they gave her 3 months to live. They removed a lump out of her chest, pierced her lung, didn't tell her, sent her home. She couldn't walk 10 feet without gasping for air. They didn't want to admit, she complained before she left. They didn't want to admit that they had done that. My aunt's a nurse. My mom called her. She said, don't lay down flat tonight, but first thing in the morning, you need to go back to the doctor and have them look at that. They admitted to her that they had punctured her lung and there was a certain percentage of it not inflating anymore. She had already felt like God had told her if she kept going back there, they would kill her, and then led her to juicing. We knew nothing about juicing. We knew nothing about food as medicine. We were the healthy standard American diet, which means we used fat-free ranch and not regular. So we had no clue. My aunt had done a bunch of research and they were desperate. When you're desperate, you hear things a little bit different than when you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ended up going to Tijuana, Mexico. She got the air out. We were able to go to Tijuana. We went for a month. We went to a naturopathic hospital down there called Oasis of Hope. They merge some conventional medicine with naturopathic, and she did layered chill treatments, high dose vitamin C intravenous, did all that stuff. Shark cartilage enemas. They did coffee and shark cartilage. We had tons of green juice, a pretty high vegan diet, but we also utilized bone broth and things like that. When we came back to the States, she went back to her conventional doctors. They all told her her tumors had shrunk significantly, but they couldn't explain why. It had nothing to do with her diet, and she could just go back to eating her regular diet. And so she did, because obviously, if that's not how you're raised, it's a lot of hard work. You don't know what the heck you're doing. And so she did. And all of her tumors started growing rapidly. I was about 19 at the time. I was taking notes on everything that was kind of going on. And that's really when we figured out, okay, there is definitely something to this. My mom, she started carrying in like 50-pound bags of carrots. I was along for the ride kind of at the time because I was still hitting up Taco Bell at night and then watching her juice these carrots. And she handed me a glass of carrot juice the first time. And I was like, that is the most disgusting thing I have ever tasted. Please do not give me that again. And she said, oh, I bet it just needs ice. So she went and got ice. It was worse. But that's kind of how things started for me. As I saw her, I had another friend whose mom had cancer, and her mom's health very much was declining. My mom was doing things to boost her immune system. She was, changing her diet, and nobody could really tell that she had cancer. She had long blonde hair. She was very beautiful. And even though she was, stage 4, because she was kind of taking this different route, and I think more importantly, just following what God was telling her to do. I don't think it's so much conventional versus, natural path. I think it has a lot to do with not letting fear control you and doing what God tells you to do. Either way, I don't care which way you go, just let that be what leads you. And so my mom, she lived for 6 more years, and I was learning a ton about juicing myself, what's good for what, just paying attention to everything. I got real nerdy about it. I'm a huge nerd about it. And yeah, so we came back to this area. My husband and I, we were in Ohio at the time. My mom got married. She had a fabulous last couple of years living really what she wanted. But she was here in the area that we're in now. And it was really hard for her to get the organic produce that she needed. So she would have to drive at least an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe three, to get good produce to juice. Very hard to get any of the stuff that she really needed. So then if you get home and you already are struggling with your health, and then to juice that and then to do all of that was just so much work. And so I came back, I tried to help. And then the cancer was kind of at a place where the doctors started bullying her and telling her that if she didn't do what they said, because she would go in and get tests done, they would say, if you don't do what we tell you, we're going to put you on a blacklist. And if you even cut your finger, we will not treat you.
There's so much wrong with our healthcare. It's like mafia. Terrible.
It gets worse. It gets so worse.
Oh boy.
So they did that. And my mom was very positive, like she was like Bible, like 10,000, and she was going to quote a scripture every day you saw her. She was ready. And we both had complete faith in her healing. And this one day I just had my son. I think he was probably a month old. And we went into the doctors, and she had been having to get platelets and some other stuff. And the doctor looked at her and she said, we can't give you any more platelets. Your insurance has run up. And my mom said, oh, well, and my mom was getting them like 2 or 3 times a week. Like she was getting them a lot. And she said, well, what do I need my body to do in order to create those themselves? And the doctor said, well, that's in your sternum. And my mom said, didn't you guys radiate that? Didn't you like kill off everything in there? And she said, yes. So my mom said, well, how much is a bag of platelets? And she said, $10,000. Just very matter of factly.
Rarely am I speechless. It's that I don't have the words for that. So what happened next?
My mom died.
Oh man. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for your loss, but you going through this, I always say that the lesson isn't there right now. And I'm sure that you grieve differently now than you did in the beginning, but there's a lesson and there's teaching here.
So the really hard thing, that doctor was so matter of fact, didn't give two shits that I'm holding my baby with my mom, nothing. Or my mom was trying to make sense to live. My mom wanted to live. That makes it hard. That makes it personal. And when we talk about the healthcare system, or we talk about food as medicine, or we talk about, you're right, the system is trash. The fact that they bullied her, had zero empathy for the fact of, they basically said, you know what, you're a lost cause at this point, go home and die. That's what was said. So where I live now, as life would have it, I live 30 minutes from where my mom lived, and I am doing everything I can to make sure that nobody else in this area has to lose their mom prematurely, because they don't know a thing about food as medicine. They don't know a thing about how to get truly good organic produce. We are trying really hard to work with local farmers to grow our produce. That's going to take a couple years, but it is something we're working on. Farmers that are dedicated to regenerative grasslands and things like that, so that our cattle and chicken and all that stuff are truly organic, so that they're getting like grass that is the best grass, and it's not sprayed, and it's not, as little intervention as possible, because there's no reason my mom, living in the middle of farm country, should have died the death she did and had such a hard time to maintain her health. So when we came back here, and 13 years ago, I did a class on juicing here when we lived here the first time. 3 people came. One woman's mom had throat cancer. She started juicing for her mom every day. Her mom, the next time she went back to the doctor, she said, I don't know what you did with your mom, but it saved her life. That's the only thing she changed. Her mom literally just died like 9 months ago. 13 years. And so anyway, we came back here. I tried to do another class. I tried to educate people because, to be 100% honest, I did not want a brick and mortar. And now that I'm in it, I remember why. It's really, really hard. I am stressed to the max, figuring out all of the logistics of financing, and wow, that's a lot. But when we have people getting off their prescriptions, when we have people neurologically regenerating, and that can say, hey, I went down to ConFITence Juice. This is what they told me to do. And now I'm not falling as much. My speech is clearing up. All of that stuff. Other girls with their moms come to me. One of my friends, her mom got diagnosed with cancer. The fact they can sit down with me and I can say, all right, this is what you need to do for this piece. It's worth all the blood, sweat, and tears. It makes, like you were saying, there's a story in it. I just can't not. And what's super interesting, Toni, is that when my mom was here and she had cancer, she had an infrared sauna and she did ionic foot baths. And people they won't know that that's my mom at first, but once they figure it out, they go, oh my gosh, I can't believe Yvette was your mom. Your mom helped me. Your mom, she had cancer and she was washing my feet. Your mom, everything that people say is the same, but it's so interesting that I'm the one bringing that full circle, or some of them. We had a lady help us with some wallpaper, and she had been helping us for a couple of days, and she came in my office and she goes, I did not know who you were. And she goes, I didn't know Yvette was your mom. She goes, she helped me with when I got diagnosed with MS, and she was going through chemo cancers, but or chemo stuff. And then she was helping me. And I'm like, and how crazy, you're hanging my wallpaper.
You know what? It comes full circle, right? Doesn't everything? I mean, when we're living on purpose, it's incredible how things, come full circle.
Yeah, it's insane. It's crazy because when I did the classes before, like I said, hardly anybody came. I came back here. I started my personal training, very low risk. I contract out of the gym here. I'm the only personal trainer. I have a great relationship with the owners. There's very little risk for me there. So I just wanted to educate people on utilizing juicing as, to better their health and educate them on these things. And I would have people come, and our first class was probably 20 people, and they started. And I remember this one lady, they got off their blood pressure medicine, and she's like, listen, like, we've had great results, but I just don't have the energy and the time to juice every day. So I found a juice bar 2 hours away, and I was like, okay, if they'll do it, I'll go down once a week and I'll go get everybody's stuff. If everybody wants to order, this was my solution to don't make me do it. I don't want to do it. So I would go down, everyone would place their orders. I would get them their juice, bring it back. Everyone would come and get it. Great. I'm not doing it yet. I am. So those people, they're the only juice bar for basically the whole 3/4 of the state. And they finally said they couldn't do it anymore. So I had a couple of ladies that I had already been educating, and they were like, I think I'd like to do this. And so I said, if we're all in it together, might as well. I mean, at this point, I'm just gonna leave it better than I found it, and I can't not at this point. So that's how ConFITence Juice kind of came about. I have avoided it for years. It didn't seem like a good business move to me. And a lot of nights I still think that. But when people get to keep their moms, and people get to live healthier, longer lives and thrive and get rid of pain and get rid of prescriptions I just need one of those a week. And I remember why I'm doing what I'm doing. And yeah, so.
That's fantastic. Wow. What a great story that you shared with us today about your journey and everything that's happening for you. So let me ask you, just, I got one or two more quick questions. Mm-hmm. Favorite book?
Ooh, that's hard. I really like Think and Grow Rich. That's kind of been the one I like savor all the time, because that's really where I have to level up in my brain is money. And I honestly have spent most of my life not caring about money. I still don't care about money, but I have a purpose that requires money. So there we are. And so that one's helped me a lot and definitely changed my life in some pretty crazy ways. I read Jocko Willink stuff and Profit First is kind of on my book list right now. Those are probably the biggest ones. Honestly, reading helps me a ton, but letting God teach me stuff is where I try to be really clear of what everybody else is saying and what everybody else is thinking, and just try to listen and dial into what he's saying to me.
Awesome. Okay, so last question. Do you have a favorite quote?
Yes. I can't quote it. This is horrible. I can't quote it verbatim, but there's a movie called The Alpinist, and it's about this guy that would go up in free solo mountains for the first time ever. No safety gear, no nothing, the most dangerous climbs of all time, and out by himself. Purposely not take any rescue gear, purposely not take anything, just go up and climb. And he says the interviewer of the documentary said, do you ever realize how dangerous what you're doing really is? And he said, I don't really like to think of it that way. He said, I just like to go up there and climb. But he said, there is a point in almost every single climb where you realize what you've gotten yourself into. And you have two choices. You can fall apart and basically die, or you can have your moment and you can find the next grip. If you can just find one little place to hold on to. And so I think of that often, is if you're really growing, you better find that, like, if I'm doubting my abilities and capabilities, I know I'm exactly where I need to be, because I'm in a growth space. I'm in a space that's going to challenge me, and I'm going to figure it out eventually. And then he says, as far as what he's doing, he just says, no, man, like, I'm just cruising around. I'm just cruising around. So anytime I get stressed or in a situation, I just take a deep breath and go, I'm just cruising around.
I love that. I love that. So Megan, for people that want to connect with you, we're going to put down, all of your information. Where's the best place for people to reach out to you?
I would say Facebook and Instagram is the best place right now. So Megan Jox, Jox, not Fox, Jox, and then email. But I think probably on those two socials, Instagram and Facebook, are the best.
Fantastic. So Megan, I want to thank you so much for spending 60 minutes with us today. Great story, great content. Loved having you. Cannot wait to blast this podcast out and, share your story with the world.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So podcast drop noon every Monday. And it's also, you can watch the interview on our YouTube channel as well. All of the links are on there. All of Megan links are on there. And you guys make sure that you're following her, because this woman is tearing it up and she is on fire. So I'm very honored that you spent some time with us today, Megan. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Toni, for having me.